Today's hand is a doozy, and I remember just being like so impressed. Like, this is Addamo in his prime. This is the early stages, 300K buy-in, super small field with some elites. So this street's not particularly exciting, but now it's interesting. Free betting 7-8 suited versus under the gun isn't necessarily something I would ever do against weak players. And let's talk about why you want to bet. So the three reasons for betting: it's for value, to get worse to call; for a bluff, to get better to fold; all right, today's hand is a doozy, and I remember watching this hand live when it happened. I didn't play that year's 300K Super High Roller Bowl, but I was watching, and I remember just being like so impressed. Like, this is Addamo in his prime, and he plays this hand pretty incredibly every step of the way. So, you know, shout out pokergo. They put incredible content on here and stream this tournament from the very start. So super fun one, and we are going to jump right in. This is the early stages, 300K buy-in, super small field with some elites, you know, Jake Schindler, one of the better players that I've ever played against, and Addamo, who I actually haven't played with in person more than once, but yeah, super tough. So here's a little preview of what you're about to see. Is a check shove on the river from Addamo, and stick around if you want to see how we got there. Hand starts off, Schindler raises 4K under the gun, pretty standard sizing at this stack depth, and gets a little spicier though when it folds to Addamo in the big blind.
Stay interested, we presume? So I'm sure many of you watching now know this, but Addamo right there in the discussion for the very best player in the world, among the hottest players in the world right now. Of course, everybody at this table
Queen 8.
lays claim to these sorts of things. And as we see, Ali.
So here you have it. 3-bet 7x, they're 200 big blinds effective. So I actually like this size at a position, but I want to take a moment to say 3-betting 7-8 suited versus under the gun isn't necessarily something I would ever do against weak players. And the reason it ends up being good against tough players is because if you never have a hand like this in your range and it comes 5, 6, 9, or, you know, those middling cards, if you never have a hand like this and your opponent's tough and aggressive and good, they're able to really put the screws to you. If the best possible hand you can have on 5, 6, 9 is aces, do you really want to put in 200 big blinds with it? So that's where things get a little bit dicey. So again, I really want to reiterate, if you're playing against some random John Smith in a $1,600 event, don't do it. It's just not good. That being said, Schindler must come with call here. You know, if you're going to start 4-betting queens to get in 200 big blinds effective, you're typically just going to get all in versus like aces and kings and maybe ace king. And so, yeah, the only real option for Schindler here is to call, and let's see what the flop is.
Let's use this hand at the stack depth for a 3-bet.
Obviously, the timing is bad. Schindler having the real deal. But how will Jake elect to respond to this 3-bet? A sizable 28,000.
I think he calls here an awful lot, if not always, and onward.
Accurately prophesized, and to the flop we go. A pesky over card. The king.
So we land on a flop that favors Addamo in the medium to high strength hands, but not in the locks. So like Addamo has ace king, Schindler probably doesn't. Addamo has aces and kings, Schindler definitely does not. He would always 4-bet those. But then Schindler can have pocket sevens, maybe 7-5 suited, pocket 5. And so that's where things get a little bit interesting. When you get in that situation where you have that upper strength card advantage, typically your sizing from a GTO perspective wants to be in that third pot range, which is what Addamo is going to come with here.
On the rainbow flop, pair of sevens for Addamo.
We see Schindler keeping a keen eye on Addamo to start things.
And let's talk about why you want to bet. So the three reasons for betting: it's for value, to get worse to call; for a bluff, to get better to fold; and for equity denial, to get them to fold out hands that have equity that might just check and get a free turn if you check. And so here, betting small, Addamo is never going to get a better hand to fold. 8s through queens, or 8s plus, we'll just say, are not folding to third pot. But you can get called by worse, like the ace 10, ace jack, ace queen with backdoor flush draws are certainly going to call a small bet here. So you get value from those, and you deny equity from hands like jack 10 suited, queen jack suited, queen 10 suited, ace 10, jack queen of diamond. And so whenever you're betting, it's typically, if it's not on the river it's just a bluff for value. But on the flop and turn, it's a hybrid of two of those three decisions. So that's a really important way to think about why I want to bet, and why you want to bet is something that you should almost always be thinking about.
Sort of a nice flop for Mike, middle pair and the backdoor stuff.
10 seconds.
Well, let us defer to the Australian for sizing considerations. Looks like he's coming with
19,
third-ish.
19,000.
So this street's not particularly exciting.
Call.
It's going to be a super standard bet and a super
19K
standard call.
follow through. Gets called by Schindler.
But now it's interesting.
Now, what a big turn card this is, Nick.
So this is where it gets pretty dicey, where in theory, Jake has every 8-9 suited combo. Same with the 5-6s and 7s. 6-7 suited. Where Addamo may 3-bet 7-8 suited at some frequency, he's not going to do it pure or 100% of the time. So this is a card that theoretically favors Jake. So if Addamo does too much betting here, Jake could maybe bluff him off a hand like ace king. So in general, Adamo's going to play this card as a very high check frequency. And, you know, if this exact hand, I could see him betting for the reasons, you know, exactly what we're looking at. Because if your opponent has 9s through queens, maybe king 10 suited, king jack suited, you can get them to fold. But in general, I kind of expect him to be a little more balanced than that. And I do like that he comes with check here.
And
In general, but I get to put a lot of pressure on things like 10s, jacks, and queens, which are quite real. He does go with the former. And in all likelihood, Jake will be content to check back.
Queens is pretty simple here. If you're betting, you might just get like jacks and 10s to fold and getting called by like ace king and aces and stuff like that. Maybe even check shove from a hand like Addamo actually has. So I would never bet queens on the turn. On the turn, I want to bet strong hands and maybe some bluffs. So like if I had a hand like 7-8 of clubs or something in Schindler's seat, I might start bluffing to get my opponent to fold 10s through queens and maybe even aces and ace king by the river. And so those hands benefit from A, equity denial if his opponent has ace queen, and B, bluffing to get a better hand to fold. It's queens, not so much. You can't really get value from worse unless your opponent has exactly something like this, which is rare. And then you're getting called by and everything's better than yours. You're not really denying equity from the 2 outs, or even like ace jack suited is very likely to only have 3 outs here. So again, got to think about the reasons for betting, and here Jake has a pretty clear check for that reason.
Again, it is a pretty good card for Jake's range. In theory, he has these middle-y sets, perhaps even some of the small 2-pair and straights. So sometimes you can leverage that to sort of put some chips in and gain some initiative. But black queens here, not the best.
And the king pairing on the...
So now I think Adamo's in a very similar spot as he was on the turn. On the river, if you bet, it's pretty unlikely you're going to get called by ace high or anything that's worse than your hand. You're probably better served checking and evaluating and maybe calling if you think they're bluffing too much of the ace 10, ace jack suited type of combos. But in general, yeah, there's not really anything Addamo can get value from here, and definitely think that check is great.
Actually may come as somewhat of a relief to Jake. Uncomplicating the texture.
How? I don't really think we bet. And I think for chip, or do we bluff if we're Addamo? We have quite a lot of showdown.
So he finally comes with check.
Scary-ish, especially against this guy who's just, you know.
Now I think Jake has a super easy value bet. He blocks king queen of spades and king queen of clubs. So it's impossible for Addamo to have king queen suited, which he probably would 3-bet from the big blind here at some frequency. He probably thinks that Addamo would bet the river with ace king and even aces. So queens is very likely to be the best hand, and his opponent can easily have jacks and 10s, and maybe the hand like Addamo has could call. And so I think that value betting in Jake's seat is pretty standard and maybe even mandatory.
True wrecking ball. I think we go for value on the strength of our kings and queens. And Addamo will have a very awkward kind of decision. Something like 60%-ish seems to be
10 seconds.
ballpark. Let's see.
Deep into the shot clock goes Schindler.
55.
And he fires 55.
And now things get pretty interesting. Like you have a pretty kind of a what I would think of is like, at first when I was watching this, like a clear caller fold spot, it's like, all right, is he bluffing some of those ace highs I spoke about before, or is he just going to be very weighted towards king X, that, you know, the weaker king X that checked back, or queens and jack? And I think people, especially against Addamo, are probably going to under bluff those ace queen and ace jacks, and so all of a sudden the idea of calling doesn't look very attractive. And this coming up is about to be the moment in which I was like, wow, this is my spirit animal. Addamo is my favorite player to watch on TV.
Right in that neighborhood.
So to speak, would be bluffing turn. Really good hand. That's an overstatement, but you know what I mean. And is he ever betting worse for value? I don't think so. So we sort of need him to be turning something like ace-jack suited into a bluff. Perhaps ace-queen, whether off or suited.
Certainly would appear that the decision is between call or fold at this point and nothing further.
So if y'all heard Ollie say that, like, he expects the decision to be between call and fold and nothing further, and honestly, at a glance, so did I. But the more you think about it, it's like, okay, well, the best possible hand Jake can have here, because he checked the turn in position, is a hand like king queen. But he might even bet bigger with a hand like king queen and hope his opponent has a stronger holding aces or a suited king that he's ahead of. And so when he bets this half pot, you know, 55-60% sizing, it's really just going to be bluffs and then probably jacks and queens, maybe even tens if he's going thin. And so that's because he's capped, because he checked in position. Schindler in position, and like 99% of players out there, would bet all straights and all sets on the turn. So he can no longer have anything better than a king, which might bet bigger. Addamo, on the other hand, could have checked the turn with ace king. He could have checked the turn with pocket kings, with 8-9. So all of a sudden, Addamo is uncapped, and he's about to show you what that means. He's going to rep a hand that's better than Schindler's range. And this is, I mean, incredible. Like I said, I wouldn't have necessarily found this in game, especially 3 years ago, but watching this hand back now is, I mean, it's just great. Like, Addamo is the sickest.
Oh my goodness.
All in.
I may have spoken too soon, Nick. I don't think either of us anticipated this savagery.
Yeah, you know, the guy is just really clicking on all cylinders. Has a good hand for it. Hindsight's always 20/20, but he blocks sevens full. He blocks 8-9.
And like, Schindler quickly folds in this massive spot in a 300K buy-in. Like, imagine how good it feels when someone folds a hand better than yours, when you check raise or like raise the river on a bluff, and they quickly fold a better hand than yours. Like, it's one of the best feelings in poker. But it's also like, from start to finish, Addamo played the hand in a sick way, where yeah, he got a run out that worked for him. Yeah, everything about the hand kind of like played out in his favor, but he took an incredible line. He may have even been going for a check shove on the turn. Like, everything about this hand was pretty incredible. And honestly, if he bets the turn and gets called by Schindler, it probably just goes check, check on the river. So he found a way to win a hand that he wouldn't have otherwise, which, I mean, hats off. This guy's the man. All right, I might have to end up making a Addamo montage. Like, all of these hands that I've seen him play are just pretty awesome. So hope y'all liked it, and I'll see you in the next one.